Hey everyone, I'm Britton Anderson with The Head. Welcome to our partner conversation with our friends at Cisco. Today we're going to dive into Cisco's evolving security landscape and their evolving portfolio and a renewed focus on firewall acceleration, hybrid mesh, campus and branch networking, and see how these capabilities are now being integrated across the broader security ecosystem. It's going to be a fun conversation today with my friends from Ahead, Gary Geihsler and Heslop, along with our friend Dave Abbott from Cisco. Today we're going to unpack the findings from Ahead's latest firewall testing process and discuss broad performance and cost considerations and how Cisco's security strategy is addressing today's challenges with our clients and paving the way for what's next in the security space. It's going to be a collaborative conversation, partner-driven, and designed to bring you some real insights from both sides of the table. So with that, let's get into it. Friends, thanks a ton for taking the time today. Dave, thanks for being here as well.
Great to be here.
Yeah, I wanted to start the conversation today, and Dave, just kind of starting with you. Like, where's Cisco security at from your perspective, and what's the vision like in Cisco's world?
Yeah, well, first, I just want to say a big thank you to Ahead's partnership, just in what we're doing together with customers, and as well some of the testing that we're going to be talking about today. I think it really defines the partnership and the direction we're going together from a security perspective. Ahead and Cisco have always worked together predominantly in a networking and a data center space. But the ability to start growing that security portfolio has been absolutely amazing. And I think Cisco's coming to real fruition here, knowing that, hey, we've been that 800-pound gorilla in the network for a long time, but we know how critical this security is. We know you have to have a secure network. You have to be protecting your users, your devices, your cloud environments, your applications, and of course, threats are growing rapidly than ever. So, we approach this with a two-pronged strategy. We've got significant R&D that we develop our own solutions in-house, and of course, we're also doing massive investments from an acquisition perspective, not just Splunk, but across a wide variety of capabilities, from identity intelligence to application security to enhanced network observability. We are the top cybersecurity acquisition leader over the past 5 years, and I think sometimes that gets lost in the press against some other vendors. But on the flip side, we are spending literally billions of dollars every single year in R&D on the product set and converging these solutions so that it's easier to consume, easier to use, and that they all work seamlessly together. So very excited about the journey, making sure that we've got end-to-end security for our customers, and that all comes together through a cohesive platform.
Yeah, we can see a lot of the investments that Cisco's made, right? I think not just from a product development instantiation standpoint, but also just from some business realignment, right? There's been a renewed focus on bringing the different business units within Cisco together. Now we're seeing a lot more cohesive integration really across the portfolio, right? And the evolution of new products, and we're going to talk about security cloud control today, and how that really kind of unifies the experience across the security stack. But really the landscape across the industry, right, is changing. We're hearing the conversation with Gartner and some of the evolving security needs of our clients from a performance perspective. Gartner's kind of coined this term around hybrid mesh firewall and kind of what that means from an architecture perspective. What's Cisco's, I think, kind of full perspective on that conversation?
Well, it's interesting because it's something we've been doing for a long time, but it's almost nice to have that vision ratified by Gartner, if you will. To be honest, Cisco and Gartner haven't always played nice in the sandbox at times, but I think we're truly coming together in the right direction on this one. And when you look at where customers are needing to adopt visibility and segmentation controls, it can't just be at certain control points like a firewall anymore. We're needing to distribute that so that we're reducing our attack surface, we're preventing compromise, and we're stopping lateral movement closer to the source of the communication. And so that means having visibility on every flow. And I think we know sometimes there is lateral movement within our networks or within our clouds that don't always traverse a traditional firewall. That's why hybrid mesh becomes such a critical component, because now we're doing enforcement of the same types of policies across our same user sets, whether that's through cloud proxies, in cloud environments, within application agents, or we're embedding it within the network itself. That's the true definition around the hybrid mesh firewall side. The great thing is Cisco has been investing in that space for over 10 plus years.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're seeing, I think, kind of the fruition and the fruits of that labor come together. You're really at this kind of point in, in the industry, and that's one of the things that we were really looking forward to evaluating from our perspective, right ahead, because we've had a lot of, I'd say, opportunities around firewall specifically that tend to shift in one direction or another for various reasons, right? And seeing kind of the differentiation with the likes of security cloud control, the unified events, and some of the correlation that it brings really across the platform seems to really start to sway sort of the differentiation towards in Cisco's favor. And that's really what I wanted to talk about with the likes of our report, and kind of and dive into a lot of the intricacies of how it really works in an operation standpoint, right? All the paper, all the fluff that's out there, right, can certainly wow a client. But I think from an operational standpoint, when you really get hands-on with it, how does it really behave and work in the real environment? And Gary, you've had a lot of insight with this too. The three of us, you, myself, and Donald, really dug into kind of several core feature sets of the firewall platform, and security cloud control, cloud delivered FMC, on-premise FMC, and
Hmm.
really put the secure firewall platform through its paces. Um, Gary, I'll start with you. Kind of talk about I'd say, the onboarding experience, and your sort of initial thoughts around getting the firewall onboarded, and that initial kind of out of the box conversation and experience that clients are going to have.
Yeah, thanks, Britton. So yeah, the security cloud control from Cisco is really a centralized location where you can, from a cloud solution, manage, firewalls, including the cloud delivered FMC that we'll talk a little bit more about, as well as other Cisco solutions in one basically SaaS solution. So this is where we're going to start to bring together shared capabilities across different platforms that lends itself right into that mesh hybrid or hybrid mesh firewall conversation. So onboarding, there's a various ways to onboard. You can onboard more traditional ways using, CLI and registration codes. That of course works when you have physical access to the device, and you're onboarding, one at a time or a couple at a time. There's also like a online registration using basically a serial number to call out to the cloud capability, and that works pretty well as well. Now, it does take a little bit longer when you're doing the serial number function. So just keep that in mind. It's really great when you're, say, doing a ship and deploy, right? Shipping to a location, asking somebody to, plug in a couple wires and manage it from the centralized location. But if you want to onboard a firewall like this moment, you're probably better off using the CLI. But both work really well, just a little bit of delay in the timing. And that's to be expected when we're, onboarding to a, management platform that's not local to the firewall itself.
But as you get into, let's say, a broader rollout conversation, right, where maybe a client's trying to roll out 50 or 100 firewalls,
Yeah.
right? There's nothing stopping them from just plugging them all in, getting the HTTP address, and going and grabbing a coffee for a little while, and coming back and seeing them all register.
Yeah, yeah, bulk deploy is available as well, and so you can just upload a whole list of the serial numbers, and while they're in transit to the location, you can have that deployment sort of ramp up, and then once they get internet access, they'll register to the cloud. Absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. And you hinted on, I think, some of the different management platforms that you can leverage, and right, and Donald, that's something you really focused on, right? Is some of the differentiation between on-premise FMC, which you've got running in your
Yep.
lab, as well as integration with both cloud delivered FMC and into security cloud control. What's your perspective, I'd say, on kind of what makes the most sense for for our different clients?
Okay, so the first thing I'll say is with the introduction of security cloud control, I kind of don't see a use for on-prem anymore, right? Because back in the day, you would have to poke hole in your main firewall to control firewalls that were in other locations. But now with security cloud control, you pretty much, like Gary said, register everything up to security cloud control. You manage that wherever, as long as you have an internet connection, you can manage your firewalls. And one of the key things when I was doing the testing is templatizing. You can pretty much templatize your entire setup. And again, once, like Gary said, when you hook it into your network, you push the template, you go get a coffee and come back and you have internet access and everything, your policy and everything is set and ready to go. So that ease of implementation compared to how it used to be back in the day, especially when you didn't have the management data interface like it now they have that, so it's easier to get things hooked up into uh, cloud security control. But yeah, in my opinion, I would probably move away from on-prem FMC, and Cisco has an actual migration path where if you are on on-prem FMC, you can hook it into your security cloud control and then migrate your FTDs or secure firewalls that you're managing. Now you can move those to secure cloud control and kind of decommission your on-prem FMC. So you don't have to worry about the HA headaches and all that good stuff. You don't have to worry about that. So Cisco has come a long way from and I'm gonna date myself here, from the 6X days to now.
Well, and Donna, I'm going to jump in on that because I think you're spot on. And this is why the testing right now was so critical. Because let's have a truthful moment. 3-4 years ago, we were in a pretty painful place with some of our firewalls, and we really frustrated a lot of our customers as well as our partners. I mean, we had a ton of code stability issues, firewall management challenges. You also had these choices in which management do you want, whether it's an old school CDO, or we were running on-prem FMC, or you were doing the on-box management with FDM. And it just became really convoluted and really frustrating. And we took a lot of those lessons learned. And for about 2 years there, we were dramatically reducing the amount of bugs. I mean, we're talking about attack case reduction of over 80%, of being able to make sure that we had proper code stability. And so we ensure all of our customers now at that 7.x code level. And now we're in the innovation game. Now we're spitting out the new features. And so that's why we were saying, hey, this is a great time to do this testing, and really appreciate the sponsorship by Ahead to go through the testing and validation now, because we've gone through all the stability changes. We've gone through the platform management convergence, and we're now adding the innovation and new capabilities that put us ahead of the market, in my opinion, at least here. And I think you have a very apt call out about management option flexibilities. We want people to move to the cloud, but truthfully, there are customers that need the air gap, or maybe their federal environment. I mean, shout out, we just got FedRAMP for security cloud control just a few weeks ago, but there are plenty of customers that still run the full on-prem. And so the great thing is we've converged the features and capabilities, so you don't have this giant matrix of choosing, oh, which one do I want to use depending on which feature set. You can run cloud, you can run on-prem, you can run hybrid. We've got the ability to connect that on-prem FMC to security cloud control and get some of the great new AI ops features, which we'll talk about. So lots of flexibility, plenty of options for customers, but you don't have to make that hard trade-off decision anymore.
Well, I do like the pun that you made about being ahead of the market. Get it? Ahead.
There we go.
I had to go there. I'm sorry, but I think on the same vein, Dave. One of the kind of just diving into some of the more nitty gritty elements of our analysis, right? And one of the things that I've personally had with clients I've supported in the past, right, has been Cisco's networking stack implementation on the firewall. I think those that have had, I'd say longer term exposure to the secure firewall, and to bring the other name up with firepower in the past, right, have had some mixed experiences with the way that the firewalls has integrated with I'd say a more advanced network topology. Things like VRF support, multi-area OSPF, routing reconvergence in large networks and large route tables, and some of the throughput, I'd say, or network level impact that upstream changes have had on the firewall system overall. So that was a kind of a core feature area I wanted to focus in on, to see how this new platform, this new software really behaved with I'd say a more advanced load than they would otherwise probably see maybe even in the real world now. But kind of putting through the paces, I built a TCP replay event with a packet capture. I was able to produce with a couple of file servers and just some bulk file transfers and some web scripts I was able to run. So I had a pretty solid base of traffic I was able to replay. It was about a 35 gig or so packet capture over the course of a couple minutes, but had that looped, and it took me a little bit to figure out how to really scrape that across all the interfaces that we had in our firewalls. But once I got it going, and of course it's not scientifically 100%, but in terms of just giving us enough of an exposure to what we were trying to accomplish, it really kind of served the purpose pretty well, because I wanted to see with real traffic what the box was going to do if it experienced things like route flaps, right? There's with OSPF, right, every time an upstream route kind of comes in and out of the routing table, there's an algorithm that reruns to determine the shortest path. And that was one particular software element that the firewall really struggled with in previous aspects. And I was not able to tip the box over. I had about 5,500 routes, most of them loopbacks, but 5,500 active individual routes that the firewall was learning, and I interrupted the path to about 1,000 of those with the virtual router I had pinned. So 1,000 routes were coming in and out of the route table every couple of seconds, and the firewall did not really blip a beat as those routes reconverged. And the algorithm we ran, and to see, I think, even across multiple VRFs, that stability come even of a firewall. We tested the 1200 series, which is really designed for, a higher end small or maybe a medium branch, if you will, with about 6 gig or so of aggregate throughput. And seeing that box really behave that well with that many routes was pretty telling to me that a lot of those, I'd say, lessons have been learned. And seeing that the stability, I think, kind of giving that confidence from just my perspective to start recommending this again really to our clients and with more advanced use cases.
Well, that's excellent.
Yeah, Brett, I
feedback.
thought your testing was really great.
Yeah, it took a little bit to get it going. It was not not a scientific thing. I don't exactly have calibrated throughput performance equipment in my home lab, but I do have some fun toys I'm able to play with to get it done. But our report that our clients will see, does have the graphical representation, some more details in there too. But really, I think that's again, it's just one component of our involvement and the depth that we were able to really kind of go into, right? And Gary, kind of pivoting back to you, I think the security efficacy component and just how policies are really instantiated and proven were also quite telling. What can you tell us more?
Yeah, so Cisco's done quite a bit to improve not only performance when security is enabled, but just the security efficacy overall, including some really unique features that Cisco has that a lot of the other vendors in the space don't. Everyone's going to have IPS intrusion prevention policies and access control policies, etc. And Cisco performed very, very well on all of those tests that we looked at. We also looked at some of the unique capabilities, something called which is encrypted visibility engine, which is a way to categorize types of data without actually doing the decryption of that data, and then being able to apply your access policies based on that. Really well performing, does a really good job at its efficacy, and allows the boxes to perform really well without having to decrypt all the traffic, which of course is a very high performance impactor on it. Another bit that's maybe a little tangential to that is the SD-WAN capabilities. And the SD-WAN capabilities are relatively new to the Cisco firewall environment, but the SD-WAN capabilities are working really well. Link choices, things like prioritizing traffic based on the application destination, those kinds of things are welcome additions to the Cisco platform that frankly been missing for a little while. To meet some of the competitors in the space. So I think a couple of pieces that are really, really welcome there. Donald, do you have any other comments on like policy that you looked at, considering you're pretty deep in that space?
So from a firewall perspective, policy is very it's integrated very well. Now, I'm more of an integration ecosystem side. So the ability to where this falls into like a great feature for Cisco is how it plays well with their other security components, like security identity services engine, pulling the SGTs, having that same construct that you can now create policy on the firewall. And what's even better with Cisco's introduction of the cloud, you can actually take your, TrustSec infrastructure, SG tagging and all that good stuff. You can put it in the cloud into security cloud control, and then you can use that in other security products, aka Cisco Secure Access. You can do it on the firewall. So now you don't have to have a VPN connection back to your main data center to get to ICE to pull that contextual information. You can pull it directly from the cloud with that integration with ICE and Cisco Secure Cloud. Excuse me for the stutter.
Well, and that's the whole point of hybrid mesh firewall, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's being able to
exactly.
take that policy and apply it to the multiple enforcement points in whatever form factor they are, whether it's a traditional firewall, a virtual firewall, your security services edge or SSE, whether it's an agent deployed on a workload. I mean, all of that should have that disbursement of the same policy and visibility. That's exactly where we're headed.
Yep. And in terms of Gary, what you were talking about with the SD-WAN capabilities, I'm glad they finally have the SD-WAN topology. Makes it a lot easier to deploy. And this is goes to the zero touch provisioning thing, right? Because when you're doing your templates, you can actually assigned a brand new, fresh out the box firewall to an SD-WAN fabric in the Cisco ecosystem. And once it comes up and it spins up the tunnels, it pulls up the VPIs, all the routing, all that stuff. And it was literally sitting in the box 2 days ago. So they're getting this zero touch provisioning thing is really a key concept for anybody that's looking for, hey, I just want to ship out a firewall. My administrators handle all the things that I need from a templatized standpoint. I have some smart hands. They plug it in, and within a couple minutes, maybe a half an hour, we're pretty much up and ready in an SD-WAN fabric. We have our internet, and then if you integrate that on top with SASE, now you can offload your SSL decryption and all that good stuff into the cloud where it's more compute space over there. So it's a lot of stuff that Cisco is introducing to the game and their firewalls that neck and neck with all other competitors.
Mm-hmm. I would also say too, from just a networking perspective, right? And I talk to clients all the time about the kind of their SD-WAN journey and where they're at. Some are in that conversation now where they've adopted either classic Viptela or first gen Cisco SD-WAN or or the likes of any of the competitors, right? And coming into all the conversations are trying to simplify the complex, right? SD-WAN has a lot of different knobs you can turn really into the board, and the secure firewall platform and through security cloud control really does a great job at making it easy, right? There's a wizard-based configuration within security cloud control, that a client would step through and kind of build out the topology, single hub, multiple hubs. But that said, right, there are some limitations. I think it's worthwhile to call it. It's not necessarily right for everybody, but for the vast majority of use cases, it really is a solid platform. And using the app identification engine that's within the secure firewall platform, I think creates a differentiator, for optimizing application level traffic and seeing all the dependencies that for example, real time, UC and voice, video, and optimizing that traffic is really kind of paramount because the latency through the firewall as well, which is not something I addressed previously. The hardware that's in the box is minimized. That latency from a both a rule instantiation standpoint and traffic throughput. It does not really insert noticeable latency really across the board. So it's a great platform from that perspective too. But there are some of the limitations of the SD-WAN side. We do call it out in our reports. It's worth considering for some clients that may have more advanced use cases. So we can certainly have a broader conversation with you as well, if that's of interest. But Dave, I think to pivot to you real quick, I think from a roadmap and vision standpoint, SD-WAN, bringing that into this platform, I think was a very wise move from my perspective, because there's certainly others in the market that are kind of leverage that a bit of as a differentiator. But from a roadmap perspective, is there anything you can share about where Cisco is kind of taking this and SD-WAN, I'd say, as a broader element of the portfolio?
Yeah, it's an app call because from a Cisco side, we are certainly known for all the networking infrastructure that we have, and we've been driving best in class SD-WAN, but then it was pretty light security features that were embedded in that. We're seeing more and more of that convergence. And so today we've got two real motions or models, if you will. One is the firewall side with the embedded SD-WAN capabilities. And so if you need very advanced security, you need all of the latest and greatest, like things like Eve, as Gary brought up, or some of the AI op functions, AI defense embedded. Those are areas where I'd want to be able to leverage the Cisco firewall. And then we've got the standard SD-WAN features that you'd come to expect, and that I think you guys call out really well in your report. We have other customers that have very advanced routing needs and very advanced global SD-WAN deployments where they need microseg within overall tunnels and all sorts of fancy route capabilities that, quite frankly, are embedded in something like our SD-WAN from Viptela. And so we're starting to see this convergence occur where you've got some great security in both platforms, but if you need the really advanced stuff, go Firewall. And if you need the really advanced SD-WAN, we go Catalyst. I imagine one day all of this comes into a centralized point, but that goes way above my pay scale. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
logically,
was gonna say I want to double click on something we mentioned like more than once now, is the AI capabilities in the firewall and the AI ops piece of it. I tested quite a bit of this. First thing they have is an AI agent. It's a chatbot inside the firewall, helps with troubleshooting, finding documentation, so on. I found it better than average. right? Not perfect, always room for improvement on these tools, but I thought it was really good at understanding basic troubleshooting. Hey, I want to create, a new tunnel to this site. How do I do it? And it did a really good job of finding not only answers, but also links to documentation so you could review. Many of them had videos attached too, so you could, see somebody walk through how the capabilities worked. And the other aspect that's out there is it had this AI ops capability, which had a couple pieces, one of them being a feature adoption, where it would kind of surface some of the more advanced features of the firewall that maybe some folks don't even know that they have, and surface this up and say, hey, you haven't adopted this at all. Or maybe you've adopted it to a certain percentage of your install base, and then show you how to adopt these capabilities like Eve and other capabilities that we saw. So I thought that was really helpful to understand how to better utilize what customers have already invested in, because they may just not know that they have these capabilities in there. And then the last one on there is a policy analyzer, which I thought was really helpful to understand things like orphaned rules, shadow rules, just access control rules that just aren't being hit because the, higher level rules are in there. Does a really good job of identifying, last time it was hit, identifying all the details that you might want so that you can clean up your policy, which of course helps with the performance. Fewer rules you have, the better the performance. So all of those things lead back to feature adoption, performance, and just better troubleshooting.
I think the policy analyzer piece. Sorry, Dave. I just gonna jump in real quick. I think the policy analyzer piece. I think from a really just I think most of our common clients, especially those that have multiple teams involved in security across an enterprise, right? And a lot of times the firewall management, like the day-to-day operation support, tends to fall to a network team, where security outlines the policy and the network, and the networking team tends to operationalize that policy, right? And classically, a lot of our clients have had to use third-party tools to find orphan rules or manually hunt and peck through either a firewall management platform or the firewall itself to look at hit counts and see how long it's been since that rule has been touched. And it's that's kind of an arduous operation standpoint. I think that's a kind of a key operational differentiator to the platform here that I'm actually candidly excited about. Seeing clients adopt that, because I think it's going to make a difference for I think smaller organizations that have a leaner engineering staff that kind of depend on sort of jack of all trades type folks to operationalize that platform. Dave, you were going to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add, a real life story. We had an enterprise customer that had 1.2 million access policies, which is just absolutely mind blowing to me. And using the policy analyzer, they discovered over 400,000 access rules that were unused or could be deleted. And the customer said that's an exercise that would have taken them over 2 weeks to uncover all of that. And they were able to discover it and clean it up in 20 minutes using this as a feature set. So real world value coming out of that. And let's be honest, most of the time your InfoSec team is putting in requests for more rules, not to request to take out rules. So being able to leverage AI to be able to do that cleanup is massively beneficial. Gary, I want to say one other thing too, in some of the AI ops stuff you were testing. I agree. These things are never perfect. I don't know if they ever really will be. I think one thing that we see differently in just our approach compared to what we see from other vendors, we slowly light up new capabilities for that AI ops. We don't give it all the documentation and just say, hope you can figure it out and that it tries its best. But we light up features as it goes. You might ask to do a certain function and be like, hey, sorry, I can't help you with that. It's just because we haven't validated that can work on our end yet. And so Cisco, with anything we do, we live by our responsible AI framework. We are very, very, very intentional about how we develop our AI and operationalize it for our customers and make sure they're only leveraging their data and our internal documentation, no other. That is a key component to what we do. We have that publicly available if anyone wants to go see that, in case they're hesitant about using some of the AI ops or AI assistant functionality.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very key point. I think, and as Cisco's AI story really evolves, we touched on, I think, the AI components that are within not just security cloud control, but the hybrid mesh platform overall, right? There's other platforms like AI Canvas that Cisco is developing pretty heavily that work to stitch together a lot of these AI agents across the platforms to create a more cohesive experience and really kind of evolve the like root cause analysis, for example, of network interruptions or security issues across an organization that will really help hone in and create some management differentiation for for our clients, that no other, I think, company has that real purview across the full stack of IT, between UCS and compute and Intersight into security cloud control into Catalyst Center for networking, or the Meraki dashboard and multi-cloud. Like, Cisco has the purview across the board to, I think, create that differentiation for clients, that it's really going to make I think a big difference as that ecosystem evolves. Right, we're kind of in I'd say wave one. But we're going to continue, I think, seeing a lot of evolution, as the time comes. I think that kind of going back to how we started this conversation, right? A lot of the unified, I'd say, purview around bringing the different units together within Cisco and evolving the platforms as they've seen now, right? We're seeing the fruits of that already come to life, right? And I think the vision, to your point, Dave, is really starting to take effect, and I think we'll see a lot of continued development and improvements across the board. So I, for one, am kind of excited about it. I know we're kind of starting to come up on time here. Kind of one last question, kind of around the table. We'll start with the ahead folks, and just kind of what's your, I'd say, that the most promising, or the most thing I'd say you're excited about with the platform, and that you've seen through our testing, that I think would make a big difference for clients. Donald, why don't you kind of go first? What's I think the biggest thing for you that stood out from our testing?
Okay, so the biggest thing for me is going to be ecosystem integration. That's going to be the biggest thing for me. One of the things that I know a lot of people are going to be looking at is this universal ZTNA, right? How's that going to go from your secure access platform and then on-prem? Because back in the initial stages, when you did ZTNA, you have to go out to the cloud and come back in for a resource that was sitting right next to you, something like that, right? For example. But now with universal ZTNA, if someone's outside of your network, they'll go through secure access. If they're inside of your network, they'll go through a secure firewall. You don't necessarily need secure access to do this, because you can do ZTNA application policy on the secure firewall itself. It has its own rule set. So I think that's a pretty cool feature. And the other thing that we didn't mention, but I want to mention now, is the multi-cloud defense, right? With secure cloud, you can actually spin up cloud native enforcement points that talk to its version of the cloud. It's not, hey, this is strictly for Azure, or this is AWS, or this is G Cloud. No, we're going to spin up these instances that can talk natively to that specific cloud instance infrastructure. So, and you've been able to manage it from one dashboard. I know everybody hears that one pane of glass thing, but this is actually seriously becoming one pane of glass, where I can manage multiple different policies and different constructs in one area. So I'm excited about that, because Cisco used to be very siloed, and now they look like they're talking to each other. And okay, we're going to put a product out that is going to hit multiple different disciplines here: cloud, on-prem, different business units. Now they're seeing like they're talking together now. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I'd kind of echo a little bit of what Donald said there. I think that the integrations with the rest of the Cisco ecosystem are really strong. Not only Dave mentioned earlier, obviously with Splunk, and now the Cisco is offering some data from the firewalls, being able to have advantageous ingestion into Splunk, integrations into things like Cisco XDR, Cisco Secure Endpoint, and really creating a cohesive ecosystem with a relatively, if not a single management platform, and allowing these platforms to really talk to each other seamlessly without having customers having to translate between them. And the last extension I'll make of that is, when we talk about the hybrid mesh firewall, Cisco is starting to bring the sharing of objects that we create in the firewall instance in the security cloud control to firewalls outside of the Cisco ecosystem. So all of our customers that have multi-firewall environments, this is a key differentiator, right? I'm not seeing other vendors in this space saying, I'm going to push objects to Cisco firewalls and doing that sort of integration work. And I think that's a real big difference, that Cisco's really looking at this as a platform where they want to play nice with the other vendors and make the customer experience most important, as opposed to the actual firewall vendor the most important thing. Of course, Cisco wants to sell their firewall, but they understand that there's going to be multi-vendor environments, and they want to make the customer experience the best they can in those multi-vendor environments.
Yeah, that's a big one too. I think on that customer experience front, the biggest thing from my perspective, I think, is a real big focus on a cloud first strategy kind of now going forward. And Donald made this point earlier, right? Like having that cloud experience be, I think fully capable of replacing an the classic on-premise management experience really shortens the time to operationalize the products that our clients are investing in, because the time frame to stand up something like on-premise FMC and just get the box in an operational state to be able to manage a device, that's already been shortcut, right? There's an existing platform in the cloud that has almost 100% feature parity, to really, I think, fully replace that on-premise perspective and have that on-premise feel, right? I think classically speaking, a lot of cloud management platforms have lacked that, I'd say, performance to feel, like it's a fully performant and fast platform to operate. That is not the case here, right? It is a fully performant, fully I'd say invested platform that's really gonna, I think, only gonna get better here with time, right? I think the integrations with Splunk, we already talked about AI Canvas, the AI features are in the cloud, leveraging Eve, the Encrypted Visibility Engine, at cloud scale to see, greater insights to, what traffic is really flowing across the network. I think these are all very big differences. Cisco's, I think, investing in that differentiation for clients to see. And I think that, to our point, to kind of put a bow on this conversation, which I think has been fantastic, right? Our report has 8+ full pages, of deep dives into each of these areas that, our clients at Ahead can benefit from, because we provide, I think, a lot of operational, real world experience, and I think some great feedback that clients can certainly consider when looking at a firewall refresh. Because I do think, Cisco is back in that conversation as a market leader, and I think this experience, this conversation, I think, has reinforced that. And so, to kind of put a close on this, thanks a ton for the time to come together and have this conversation. Thanks to our friends at Cisco, for having us and working through this process with us. I think it's been, great for us to kind of see this firsthand and see where this is really going. So, in closing, for both Gary and Donald at Ahead, Dave at Cisco, thanks a ton for the conversation, for tuning in for us today. Looking forward to the conversation with our clients here in the future, with Cisco Secure Firewall. So thanks a ton. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.